Yeah. I want to ask you a last kind of question here. You mentioned at the beginning you wrote this intentionally as a manifesto, and part of a manifesto has what actions can we take. I think a lot of people, look, we've all heard of climate change at this point, right? We've also heard what we can do. We need to recycle. We need to do all these things. So from a less, I want to say a less benign perspective, right? Somebody with your, perspective of the universe, what are the things you recommend to people, either from an action item perspective, but also from a mindset shift, from a cosmic viewpoint that we can do?
That's yeah. So they're all, I mean, in the list, there is a list of things. There are the obvious ones, right? And the less meat, the this and that.
Sure.
Um, but to me, what's really essential, and I try to make this very clear and kind of maybe even too harsh at the end of the book, we have to reconnect with the natural world and in ways that we have not, I mean, because as we segregate ourselves into big cities, we basically, what is a big city? Well, it's basically a place where you push nature out.
Mm-hmm.
But, mac- macroeconomically speaking, a city is where nature isn't, meaning the forests, they're all outside. And so, yeah, you build a park in the middle of the city, and maybe if you live in front of a river, or if you live in front of an ocean, you can go for a walk or a run and stuff like that. But the concrete jungle that we built is not the green jungle, it's the concrete jungle. And it has been done to push nature out of boundaries because since the agrarian civilization, connecting back to the beginning of our conversation, nature was seen both as plentiful but also as a threat.
Mm-hmm.
You had the animals, you had this and that you had to be careful with. And so we have progressively forgotten that we are just part of this natural world because we have lived for so long away from it, and so what can people do? I mean, I was in Italy this summer and I went to an astronomical viewing night, in Tuscany with some friends. And because they knew I was an astrophysicist, they're all excited. It was
Sure.
an amateur, it was a lot of fun. But in talking to these people, who are just awesome people, all of them, many of them told me, wow, I had forgotten what the sky looked like. I hardly ever look at a star or observe a sunset, and I don't even know a difference between a star and a planet. And I don't ever take walks in woods or go on a trail run or walk or hike. And we have really, really moved away from this world. And of course, we don't think about nature when we push it away.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see it. You see what? Oh, you see the mosquitoes, which are annoying, or the cockroaches, or the rats in New York.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see the good stuff. You just see this kind of stuff. But the point is that we are very much in need of this reconnection. And there are lots of groups doing that.
Yeah.
There's this more like, I wouldn't call it new age because it's true, like forest bathing, the notion that you go into a forest and you monitor your physiological rhythms and your hormonal levels and your heartbeats, and everything goes to a better place.
Absolutely.
So there is good in being in the world because that's where we come from, you know.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've said this once or twice on the podcast before, but since I was about 21, so I'd say right around when I graduated college, started working. Work is stressful, life is stressful, being adult can be stressful, all those things, right? And lived in a more urban area. And I'd say once a month or so, once every 2 months, I would get this feeling, and I didn't know what it was, but it was so intense that I would go camping. That was my thing. I would go camping. And I didn't know this at the time, but me and some friends would go. Of course, we'd bring some beers and stuff. We'd bring an axe. We'd chop down some stuff. We'd have a fire. And I didn't know that I was doing it for the purpose of refueling, for the purpose of some kind of energy shift. Now, fast forward, I think start listening to myself more and more as I get older. And just a few years ago, we live on 3.5 acres in a forest, essentially. and the urge to go camping is pretty much gone. Now I like it, but I don't need it anymore. But what I do need every day after work, I go outside and I will either mow some grass or I'll trim some trees or something. I'll go to our garden. And I can guarantee you that if I were to wear these monitors, I would be able to see the difference. Just by being surrounded by greenery, I know it has a more profound impact. So I'm just saying that because I wholeheartedly agree with the mindset shift that you're talking about.
Yeah, people need to do that, and they say, "Oh, but I live in Manhattan, or I live in Cincinnati, and what can I do?" I'm like, There'll be parks, there'll be places where you can go and see the green. You can connect. You can, if you cannot get out of the city, grow a bonsai tree and
Yeah.
connect to the world in more active ways and natural world in more active ways. Because honestly, we are just the result of our experiences that we gain through relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And, now that I know you, I'm a different person and you are a different person because of this conversation. And this happens not just with people, but with trees, with pets, with animals, with the sky. Every time you interact with something, you become something new.
Mm-hmm.
And so opening your mind and your spirit to this kind of connection. Like I need, just like you, I'm fortunate, I'm a professor at Dartmouth. We are out there and I live literally in a forest
Mm-hmm.
with creeks, right behind here. And I am a trail runner. So the Appalachian Trail is right behind my house.
Yeah.
And that to me is, I tell my friends, I'm going to the temple
Ah,
because that's where I worship,
yeah.
and what it is, and if you think of the word religion, right, and say, oh, here it comes. Religion, the one of the ways you can think of the word is religare, from the Latin to reconnect.
Hmm.
So, in the traditional sense of the word, is a reconnection with God, whatever it is that you believe in.
Right.
But in our secular spiritual world, it really is a reconnection with nature and our roots as honestly animals that need this stuff.
Yeah.
We need to be out in the world. And the more we don't, the sicker you feel.
Yeah. I love it.